Welcome back. I am so happy to see you here again. Today, we are bringing an episode that I have been wanting to talk about, and I have been sprinkling a couple things across the other episodes about it, but I felt like it was time, especially in this summer season, for us to finally talk about what actually is clean eating, and let's just say it's bloody confusing. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, one thing that I want to make clear as a nutrition student is that this is one of the topics that I have already talked about. The idea of clean eating is not even a term that is associated with a particular law or particular term that has a connotation that is specific. Like, for example, the word light or the word low fat or a source of a particular vitamin or mineral. Those particular words, they have a law behind it where they can only put those particular words if it has a particular meaning. And I'll go into some of the more buzzworthy ones later on in this video. But first, I wanted to make you understand that the word clean eating, unfortunately, came from the reality of people associating food with something that was unclean, not good, something that was wrong or even bad. When in reality, nothing in nutrition is either good or bad for you. And even if we talk specifically about processed foods and high sugar foods, those are not technically bad for you if you consume them the right way. And I will go further into detail about that particular part. So for now, I wanted to give you some context of how this whole shabacle of dieting and clean eating even started to begin with. So for that, we need to go back into history. First, it starts with the 1920s, where calorie counting became a trend. It originally came from the idea of less is better, and for the first time, women specifically were encouraged to track numbers, not nourishment. So basically, people realized how to do the calculations when it came to calories specifically, and people started to weigh their foods, collect the number of grams in their food, and convert it to the calculations of the number of the calories. And not only was that time consuming because we didn't have the world that we have now of apps like MyFitnessPal and many others, but the reality here is that it started this idea that less is better. And women, unfortunately, were one of the most predatory ones in this whole thing. Then came the 1950s, which became the boom of the ad culture and the slim equals successful ideal. It started to blow up weight loss products, all kinds of things given specifically to women to help them lose the weight. We talked about so many things in my history class that were absolutely disgusting. There's so many ads out there, and if you take the time to look at them, if you look with the perspective of the 21st century, you're going to be disgusted by everything that was said to women, from things like certain things that are natural and typical in women being seen as horrendous and horrible. It was just a crazy boom. And the funny thing is that at the same time, we have people trying to fight against it. In particular, we have people like Marilyn Monroe, which she became one of the icons in terms of fashion when it came to more curvaceous women. But at the same time, unfortunately, she was seen as flabby and fat for a prolonged period of her career. She was not seen with the success that we see her now. And nowadays, we see her as an icon. Back then, she struggled a lot because of this whole stigma. Then in the 1970s, the crash diets and the grapefruit fixation became a thing. We're talking about the cabbage soup, the grapefruit diet, the 800 calorie days. I'm looking at this just to I had to look at it because it was horrendous. And we're talking about the decade of extremes. people would just consume like all kinds of things, and one of them was the cabbage soup diet. The cabbage soup diet was based off of the idea that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner you only had a can of cabbage soup. The 800 day diet, or the 800 calorie per day diet, we're talking about a time where women would literally starve themselves. They would only have a meal either with their husbands at home, or they would only have their breakfast. It was absolutely insane, and all for the sake of dieting and looking thinner, but definitely not in the sustainable way. Then in the 1980s was the low fat era. So suddenly everything was fat free, but it was packed with sugars and chemicals. So basically what happened is that they realized that they were able to remove the fat from many typical household products. And unfortunately, what tended to happen is that the products didn't taste as good and didn't work as well, or people didn't enjoy them. So what they did is that they filled it up with sugars and chemicals. And when I mean chemicals, I don't mean, chemicals are bad, because if we look at actual food, everything is chemicals. But what I mean is to create the substitution of something like fat that we need also to consume, they inserted things to substitute this, to give the same texture. And one of those things that they added was sugar. In particular, in the US, was high fructose corn syrup, which is a sugar made out of corn. But the thing is, that is an extremely highly concentrated form of sugar. If we look at how we rank sugar, and I'll probably plop an image if I can, or at least link it down below for you guys to see it, is that we have different levels of how we associate sweetness. And sugar is the baseline, is how we compare things is to sugar, glucose. And the reality here is that high fructose corn syrup is considered sweeter than sugar. So it's more addicting and it's more palatable. And what we mean by palatable is that it tastes better. It's more intriguing to our mouths and to our mouth sensors. So what tended to happen is that people removed the fat, but they still overconsumed because of the sugar. Then in the 1990s came the Atkins diet, which was the low carb obsession. And I'm even looking right here, like they did things like comparing good fats to bad fats, bad carbs to good carbs, cheat meals, clean meals. Good God. Basically, they saw food not as fuel for the body, but as a test of discipline and virtue. The Atkins diet, if you actually look back at it, originally the low carb diet, or even the keto diet as we know it now, it was originally designed for epileptic people. So people that had epilepsy. And that was because they came to the realization that that particular diet for people that were unmedicated and uncontrolled, okay? When I mean uncontrolled is people that did not take their medication or they skipped their medication, okay? So people that were not medicated or had their medication under control, with this particular diet, it helped with their symptoms. But here's the kicker. That was how it was originally designed. But Mr. Atkins decided to publish it for everyone else and say it was the perfect diet for everyone. The reality here is that carbs are a source of energy. Our body uses primarily glucose to be able to keep our body running. Yes, it is true that the keto diet comes from the word ketosis, which comes from ketones. This is because when you are low, very low on glucose, your body needs to give the rest of your cells that don't require glucose, like, for example, your blood cells. Your blood cells need glucose. They are not able to use ketones at all. And what tends to happen here is that you start to produce ketones. Those ketones are basically a way of your body utilizing your fat as a form of energy, but is not as efficient as glucose, aka sugar. Now here's the kicker. There are certain things in your body that they cannot and will not use ketones as a form of energy, such as your blood cells and other parts of your body that cannot and will not run under ketosis. They can't, which is why a lot of people that do the keto diet, after a while, they start to feel sick, and they even call it the keto sickness. And the reality here is just, it's your body screaming at you, letting you know that, hey, if you keep this going, this is not gonna end up well. And that is because a lot of your body cannot even process it. And also, a lot of times what tends to happen is that people feel more lethargic, they feel more tired, and it just doesn't go on well. What tends to happen here is that, unfortunately, for that, we see two extremes: the people that go super low carbs and people that are consuming high carbs because they're not, controlling the amount of carbs that they consume. Why? Because a lot of people, like for example in the US, UK, and many other places, we are very much consuming fast food. And fast food pretty much has a high carb content, such as hamburgers, breads, breaded stuff. All those things are increasing the typical carb consumption that a typical person would have if they were to eat a more whole food type of diet. Like, for example, the one that we talk a lot in school and the one that tends to be mentioned the most, which is the Mediterranean diet. If you actually look at the Mediterranean diet, it is recommended to consume a relatively high amount of things that are considered carbs. But because they're more whole food, they react differently in the body in comparison to a highly processed type of carb like a hamburger from McDonald's. But let's go on to the next thing, the early 2000s. In the early 2000s was the South Beach diet, the good or bad foods. And the reality here is that this unfortunately started with stuff like the Weight Watchers, where you had the color grading of the foods, the green foods, the yellow foods, the red foods. It basically just equated a particular type of food with being good or bad for you. And that just started to wreak havoc in everyone. Then in 2010s, it started the paleo, keto, and the fear of processed foods. aka carbs became evil again, processed was poison, sugar was sin, and entire food groups were wiped clean. People started to not consume breads, pastas, rice. People started to dread the idea of carbs. And the funny thing is that at the same time, people increased the consumption of salads. So what tended to happen is that people consumed what we call simple carbs. So just to give a very quick explanation, simple carbs are the type of carb that are easily digestible. Stuff like fruits, veggies. They're highly and quickly digestible because their sugar bonds, their glucose bonds, are weaker in comparison to complex carbs like breads, pasta, and rice. This is because for bread specifically, it is technically a processed food. Is it a simpler processed food? Yes. Why? Because bread is just pretty much just flour, salt, and water. Pasta, the same thing. Sometimes egg is added, but most of the times it's just the same composition, but in different quantities. And what tends to happen here, unfortunately, is that people associate something like a bread with something bad, when in reality, bread and pasta and rice are great allies to keep your sugar nice and balanced, to keep you burning, relatively stable, and keep you from having the constant crashes that people feel when they're in a diet where pretty much all they consume is some source of protein and basically just salads or veggies. In the 2020s, we have the buzzwords coming in of clean, gluten-free, and detox. Now, gluten-free is being pushed to everyone, whether they have sensitivities or intolerance. Okay? Because here's the thing. You have two types of people that could benefit from gluten-free. Those that are celiac and those that are intolerant. Everyone else doesn't need to consume gluten-free. And if you happen to feel better after the consumption of, gluten-free products, it could just simply be that something is wrong in your diet or you're actually intolerant and you never knew about it. The other thing is clean. It sounds healthy, but it doesn't mean anything. And then the word detox. This one is so frustrating. This is the worst one of all of them. Detoxing, your body doesn't need to detox. If you have a perfectly healthy, functional liver and perfectly healthy, functional kidneys, you do not need any detox. Your body has such an amazing capability of detoxing. And I would love to actually bring a particular example. If you are someone that you like to drink alcohol, in case if you don't know, alcohol is technically toxic to your body, which is why the more you consume, the longer it takes for your body to get back to normal. It's also why it's an addictive substance, because it can linger in your body because it takes so long to break down. Your body has the amazing capability of picking up something that is toxic to your body, which is ethanol, which is what is in alcohol. Alcohol is ethanol. Ethanol gets transformed in your body and breaks down in a very particular way into one of two types. Either a toxic type, which is when you overly consume and your body cannot handle and it cannot do the process correctly. Or if you consume very little or you're moderate about it, your body goes straight into trying to remove it through your pee. So basically, after you drink so much, the reason why you go ahead and you go to the bathroom so many times is because your body is trying to expel alcohol, aka ethanol, out of your body. So you don't need to get anything detoxing. You don't need detox teas. You don't need detox foods. You don't need to do a 20 list worth of vegetables juiced into a machine to detox your body. Your body has the ability to detox. Okay? You don't need any of it. And we reached to now, 2025. And people are just confused. There's so many terms out there, and there's so many things: cutting carbs, cutting fat, cutting sugar, cutting everything. And the reality here is that is the job of people like myself that are studying nutrition to help out people and let them know how they should go about their life, because people are confused and we're here to try to educate. Here's the thing: your choices don't define your worth. Guilt is completely different from guidance, and health is a behavior, not the labels. Okay. And next, what I'm going to do is teach you what some of those words actually mean when they show up in your label. Okay, so I'm going to look right here just so that I don't get this wrong. I am currently looking at one of the files from my school, from one of the classes I had. And I'm going to talk about 4 specific ones because those are the more buzzworthy ones that tend to be more brought up. In particular, light in the label, what it means is that it's 50% less fat/sugar than the regular version. In the reality, normally it's pumped with additives to make it taste normal. So they remove all those ingredients, but they add things like flavors or emollients or, texturizers to improve the texture, taste, feel in the mouth so that you feel as if you're eating the same thing. It tastes similar to the same thing, but the only thing is that it's less caloric because there's less fat or sugar. But then, for example, if it's for sugar, they normally tend to substitute it for stuff like stevia, for example. And for fat, normally what they tend to do is that they add, certain additives that they're not fatty, but they're going to give the same texture as fat in the product that was removed. Another thing is detox. It basically means nothing. It's unregulated. And as I said before, your liver and your kidneys already detox you, so you don't need to add anything. Low inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. Here's the thing. Anti-inflammatory is different from low inflammatory. Anti-inflammatory is what we tend to use for things like when we're trying to describe fruits and vegetables. Because they have antioxidants, they are anti-inflammatory. What that means is that when we consume those foods, the free radicals, which is the why it's called inflammatory, the free radicals in our body tend to be reduced through the consumption of antioxidants, because the radicals, instead of oxidizing and do the process, they're not. So that's why it's called antioxidants. The antioxidants naturally have an anti-inflammatory response because free radicals, through their excess, what they do is that they slightly inflame the body. So in a way, by consuming, for example, stuff like berries, which have a high anti-inflammatory content because of multiple compounds within them, they will reduce your inflammation in the body caused by excess of free radicals. Now, low inflammatory foods doesn't have a particular standard because there's no way to prove that it's low inflammatory for the body because everyone responds differently, which is why it is a hard thing to gauge. So, for example, I could recommend you to consume stuff like, for example, oranges because they have a high quantity of vitamin C. But I could also say the same thing for peppers because actually peppers have an even higher quantity of vitamin C. I could say the same thing for stuff like carrots. Carrots have carotenoids. Carotenoids are a compound that are found in orange-based products such as carrots and other types of orange-colored vegetables. Like, for example, pumpkin also contains it. What they do is that they convert into vitamin A, which per itself converts into retinol, which is why there was the whole buzz around the carrot salad being an at-home internal retinol. Sweet pie, okay, how do I say this in a nice way? The likelihood of the retinol contained in the vitamin A that you consumed from your carrot going to your skin and give you the same effect as a topical retinol is like 0.01%. Most of that retinol / vitamin A will actually go into your body because you consumed it. It's going to go into your body. Will it maybe in the long term, if you consume, good amounts of vitamin A, is it going to help you? Yes, because you're going to be with your reservoirs nice and full. You're going to have your vitamins fine and not being depleted or needing supplementation. But it's not going to give you the same effects as topical retinol. Okay, because topical retinol functions completely different from the vitamin retinol that goes through vitamin A. And then the next thing is natural. It literally doesn't mean anything. It just literally means what it means. It's not artificial. So when we talk, for example, in natural, we especially see it in yogurts, for example, like natural yogurt. Basically what it means is that it was a yogurt that they didn't add sugars to it. It's not sweet. They just did the yogurt and they packaged it. That's all there is to it. And it also doesn't mean healthy. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's healthy. Arsenic is natural and it's not healthy for you. It just doesn't really mean anything specific. So, for example, the word natural, the way that you should look at it or the way that you should take it upon yourself is turn around and read the label. If it's, for example, in a yogurt, most of the times, basically, all it's letting you know is that the yogurt doesn't have any added sugars, which means that it's low in sugar. It only has the natural sugars presented in the yogurt during the fermentation. And idealistically, get a yogurt that still has the active bacteria because that's going to be good for your gut. So in a way, you're going to improve your body in that way. But that's the only way that the word natural is ever going to be good for you as an indicator to then turn around and read the label. So before I keep on going on to how to actually eat well, I wanted to make a point here. Wellness gurus and dietitians are completely separate, different people. The reality here is that most influencers, they are pushing hormone and gut health and supplements and meal plans and are like obsessed over like seed oils and gluten and anti-inflammatory foods. Most of those don't have a degree behind themselves. And unfortunately, even some that do have a degree will find themselves going down the rabbit hole of recommending a generalized idea for many, many people. Here's what actually needs to, for people to understand. The whole point of health is not to give you more stress. The whole point of health is to teach you, is to make you understand that you don't have to complicate things, that you don't have to let go of the things that you enjoy or the things that you like, that you don't have to call something a cheat meal just for the sake of eating it. You can consume healthy foods literally all the day and then just have a chocolate at the end of the day. You can eat an ice cream while you're on vacation. You can eat a pasta bowl and be fine. You can eat a slice of bread with an avocado on toast and you're gonna be fine. There's nothing more frustrating as a nutrition student to see people basically penalize themselves for eating food. Because here's the thing. The key here to nutrition is a balance in between the stuff that are good for you and the stuff that is not good for you. And when I mean it's not good for you, it's like high sugar, highly processed, McDonald's type of level. It's fine if you once a month go out with your friends to watch a movie and go and eat McDonald's. You're not gonna die. Especially if the rest of the month you are consuming all of your vegetables, consuming a reasonable amount of fruits, consuming a good amount of protein, keeping a balance in between carbs, proteins, and fats, making sure that you get as varied and rainbowed of foods. And when I mean rainbow, I mean literally rainbow, like eat the colors of the rainbow, put a rainbow on your plate. The prettiest thing that for me it is, and I can tell you right now, today my lunch was basically one of those like ham stuffed, like basically it was like a ham stuffed with cheese. That is not healthy whatsoever. It is a cured meat. It is high in salt. And I consumed that with a large, wonderful, colorful salad, which had lettuce and carrot and purple cabbage and corn, and with a gorgeous, lovely light vinaigrette. And it tasted great. I feel fulfilled. I ate something that I hadn't eaten in a long time. I enjoyed myself thoroughly, enjoyed my food. I didn't overeat as well, because that's also a point. I didn't overeat. I consumed my portion. I feel satisfied. I had a moment of quality with my mother because we had lunch together. So we had no devices, no nothing, just talking to each other. And we enjoyed each other's company while eating a nice, balanced, healthy food, which is the whole point of wellness, is just to be as healthy as possible and just to balance everything out. Okay? So, without further ado, because I feel like I'm rambling, we're going to go into how to actually eat well. So, add before you restrict. What do I mean by this? Instead of asking yourself, what should I cut out of my diet? You ask yourself what is missing. So look at your plate and you have to think for yourself. Okay, is there enough fiber? Is there enough protein? Is there enough color? Because if your plate is just a thing of spaghetti with some meat sauce, instead of thinking, oh, I'm just going to take out the pasta. No, keep the pasta. What you're going to do is use stuff like the plate method. You're going to pick up your plate, divide it in half, and then one of those halves is divide in half. And then what you're going to do is put one full half of vegetables, as colorful as you can. Green, orange, purple, blue. I mean, is there even a blue vegetable? Probably there is, but I probably don't remember it. Then in the other half that you divide it in two, normally what you do is that one of those halves you put your protein, the other half you put your carbs. In the case, for example, of the pasta with the meat sauce, you just put that half with the pasta and the meat sauce. And you now have just turned a relatively overconsumption type of meal that, you know, would cause you to maybe feel bloated, to feel tired, to overeat. And now you have just created a balance where you still are going to enjoy one of your favorite foods maybe, while still being balanced. And that is the point. Instead of you removing, what can you add? Okay, maybe you're a fan of an avocado on toast. Okay, we have the toast, which is a form of carb. Great. Now, which type of bread is it? Okay, it's a white bread. Then how about we change to a whole grain or cereal bread? Fantastic. The avocado, amazing, lovely, healthy fats. Amazing for your body. Fantastic. Keep that. Okay, then how about we add an egg or something like a smoked salmon or a burrata, or a French mozzarella cheese on top. That's going to allow you to have a source of protein, allowing you to feel more fulfilled, allowing you to not overeat, allowing you to feel better, and giving your body more nutrients to yourself. Another mistake that I see is consuming caffeine in an empty stomach. First of all, you're going to ruin your gut microbiome by just simply doing that. Your gut health is just going to go down. Second thing, you shouldn't, because you can increase your chances of having heartburn. You're going to give yourself a spike, and is going to make you actually have a bigger crash from your caffeine because it gets absorbed too quickly. So idealistically, have your meal and then have your caffeine. When I mean literally have after, I mean after. I eat my full breakfast first with something like a milk or water or even a juice, and then I have my cup of coffee. And that really allows me to have a better balance and not have the caffeine crash. And that includes for anything caffeine. We're talking about espresso, a coffee, a latte, even matcha. Okay, so be careful with that. The second thing is the 80-20 rule, but realistically, because I feel like a lot of people pick up the 80-20 rule and they just flip it upside down. Here's what you need to do. 80% of the time, and I'm going to say 80% of the time, and I'm going to talk to it as if it's like a day, because the 80-20 rule, a lot of people see it as having to be a week. It doesn't have to be a week. It can be on the day. So 80%, which means if you consume food maybe like 6 times a day, it means that one of your meals, you could be a little naughty. And when I mean naughty, I don't mean literally naughty, just something that feeds your soul. Maybe you're someone that like you love during summer to go out on a walk with your dog and grab an ice cream. Go have the ice cream. Maybe you're someone that you absolutely adore eating something like a tomato soup with a grilled cheese that has all the types of the fatty cheeses that people love. Consume it. Maybe you're going to go out with your friends to the movies and you want to eat some bloody popcorn that has all of the syrup. Consume it. It's not going to be the bowl of popcorn. It's not going to be the McDonald's burger. It's not going to be the ice cream. It's not going to be any of those foods that just make you feel better and allow you to enjoy your life. They're going to kill the rest of your day or the rest of your week. It's not going to be that one food. Now, the key here is exactly that, is to create that balance. And when we mean by balance, I truly mean balance. Have a balanced breakfast. Consume your caffeine only after you eat. Eat snacks, okay? We should technically be eating every 2 to 3 hours smaller portions of meals. What tends to happen is that people have a large breakfast and then have a large lunch and then have a large dinner. And then what tends to happen at night when they're hungry? They crash and burn and binge. Why? Because they're being perfect all day and they reach the end of the day and they just feel like binging. And then people just feel horrible, because then when they actually are binging, they just feel horrible with themselves. And people shouldn't have to go down the rabbit hole of having to seek help over food. Food is nourishment. And that's actually one of the things that I was going to go next, is curate your feed. If people or someone is making you feel bad about your meals, unfollow. Your feed should be helping you to eat more at peace, not in panic. Your feed of your social medias, the people around you, should be helping you and encouraging you to consume more varied, wholesome, wonderful foods. And when I mean wonderful foods, I mean truly wonderful. Like, the world is so beautiful when it comes to food and culinary. You have the Mediterranean, you have Indian, you have Italian, you have South Asian. You have so many cuisines in this world with a beautiful plethora of just wonderful foods. And you're telling me that I should just stick to my little corner of the world and eat whatever freaking guru is telling me that the worst part is that the gurus will tell you that today this one thing is bad for you, and in 2 months' time they'll tell you it's fine for you. Really? Really? Because you wanna know why? They're wish-washy, they're controversial, they wanna make a crazy banger thing today, and then in 2 months they forget what they said because they don't believe in it. They completely forget what they said because they don't have any sort of ethics at all, and they'll then tell you that that thing is good for you. You wanna know why? Because they probably make money out of saying that it's not good for you, and then less than a month later, they have the company being like, hey, we want a partnership with you, yada, yada, yada. Here's how much we pay you for you to say that this is actually good. And then they start to say that it's good again. Huh? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Because they will literally go out of their way of finding studies. That's the worst part for me. They start to quote studies that, one, it literally, if you read the whole thing, says it's inconclusive. Two, they only read the abstract because they don't even have sometimes a license or bother to search any further. And then sometimes, which probably wouldn't surprise me, they go on AI chats like ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, or whatever the heck they use, and they go, hey, I want to make a point of this thing being healthy. Find me a study, a random ass study, that proves my point. Instead of looking at metadata, instead of looking at correlation data, comparison data, because the job of people like myself as medical professionals, because that's who I want to be, as a medical professional, our job is to let you know what works and what doesn't based off of multiple studies. We're not talking one study proving a thing. We're talking multiple studies. Sometimes there's studies upon studies. Sometimes there's studies from 1970 that are bunked and debunked again just to prove a point. Because people don't believe it or people believe it's true, and then they're like, oh, I don't believe that this person debunked it because their thing was flawed, so I'm going to try to do it myself to prove that it's true. And then they fail at it because duh. Sometimes it happens that this person says one thing, the other person doesn't believe it, they prove it that it's wrong, and then the other person goes to say, oh, I don't believe that it's actually wrong, so let me try to prove that it's right, and then they just get it wrong sometimes. Because sometimes things are inconclusive. Because sometimes things don't work or they're unrealistic. Like, don't get me started with the fact that people turn, and I don't remember which creator it was, but I saw this one video that he was talking about the fact that sometimes people are like, oh, seed oils are bad for you. But then when you go and see the studies, one, they're done in mice, which don't have the same type of body as humans. And two, they give it like 200 or 500 times the amount that anyone should ever consume. Yeah, I don't think consuming like 1 liter of seed oils in one day is going to be a normal thing for most people. Most people will consume maybe 3 tablespoons in the worst case scenario, which is already a lot because the average person doesn't even consume 1 full tablespoon. Especially if you're Mediterranean, then you don't even consume seed oils because your oil of choice is olive oil. Just saying. Then, last point, build meals that satisfy. Okay, this one is basically just me teaching you. Focus on stuff like fiber, like veggies and grains. Focus on protein, like eggs, beans, meats. Fats, like olive oils and nuts. And then just have your joy. Yes, you can have your dessert. You can have your ice cream. You can have the cake slice at the birthday party. You can have that one little thing that you really want to have. You can have the popcorn at the cinema. It's fine. You can have it. Because feeling hungry, and I need to say this because people don't seem to fucking listen, you being hungry is a feedback. What do I mean by this? The way that our body actually gives you the signal for hunger. A lot of people seem to not be aware of how it actually signals. That feeling of you having that pit in your stomach, of you having that almost like salivation or dry mouth. It's either one of those two, depending of your body. And having this innate feeling of like the gurgles in the stomach, that is your body literally telling you, hey, Time to eat. Hello? Someone there? And it's not going to be any amount of water or gum or whatever else you want to consume that it's ever going to kill that hunger. And what you need to understand is that if you focus on consuming meals every 2 to 3 hours, consuming balanced meals, making sure that you have your fiber, your protein, your carbs, your fats, believe me when I tell you, you're not going to have this insane hunger going on, which is not even healthy for you. And those are the points that I wanted to make. To finish off, because I don't want to take any more time, the reality here is that clean eating promised health, but unfortunately it just delivered shame. It just delivered this feeling of people feeling like they couldn't consume the stuff that they liked. They couldn't even consume sometimes their cultured cuisine just because it was seen as bad or horrible or overindulgent. And the reality here is that the key to nutrition, regardless of where you live, regardless of your culture, regardless of how you see food, what matters here is you creating balance, consuming a little bit of everything, allowing yourself to have moments of joy and enjoying the foods of your childhood, enjoying certain foods with your friends, experimenting other people's cuisines and ways of cooking, being open to everything and being open to just put all the colors of the rainbow in your plate. And even if you are someone that you have a particular diet like vegetarian or vegan or pescatarian, any other, your key to your wellness, to your health through nutrition is just to, within your little world, within your culture, your diet type, to just consume as varied as humanly possible. And to not deprive yourself from the little joys, from the little moments. Because the saddest thing that I could ever see is talking to a child and them telling me that even on their birthday, they didn't eat the slice of cake just because they didn't want to get fat. And that to me is absolutely horrible. And don't get me started with the watermelon birthday cakes, because that to me is just sad. Enjoy your piece of cake. Enjoy your ice cream. Enjoy your McDonald's, as long as everything else is taken care of. So let's build a relationship that is calm and nourishing with food. So instead of removing, we're going to add more good things. More vegetables, more fruits, more fermented foods, more lovely things to help with our hormones, to help with our vitamins, to help with our bodies thrive. Because that is a lot more important than any sort of diet that may come from the world of skinny talk and clean eating and gurus that don't have a certification. And with that, I'll leave you till next week. And I hope you have an amazing, awesome day and stay healthy and eat your veggies. Stay good. Bye-bye.